It is the nature of youth to rebel and pull away from existing cultural norms. It's a part of self-discovery, a necessary part. Every generation since World War II, and probably much further back than that, has had its countercultural component. It began with the Beat generation of the 50s, inspired by Jack Kerouac and his restless rejection of materialism, capitalism, and authoritarianism. I suppose that after the war and the frenzy to return to normal life, which birthed cookie-cutter suburbs and the advertising culture, some pushback was to be expected. The Beat generation and the Beatniks that followed were an unsettling presence in post-war America. And the rest of America either feared or dismissed them as misguided degenerates. And then in the 60s, with the Korean conflict still in view and Vietnam beginning to consume the airwaves, the next round of rebels came with long hair and flowers, fearless drug use, and the summer of love. The hippies had read Kerouac and the other Beat voices and were completely committed to a rejection of the American culture that seemed to have evolved into perpetual war and even more consumerism. Campus colleges erupted with protests, chants of "make love, not war," and eventually the violence of the killings at Kent State. The hippies dropped out of American culture, created communes, and sought a back to basics and nature way of living. And then there was Woodstock. The majority of Americans thought they were dirty, ungrateful, and maybe unhinged, and to be feared. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, punk and goth cultures agitated the fringes of society. Much was driven by the music and the messages of a rejection of pretty much everything. Consumerism, corporatism, authoritarianism, mainstream ideas of beauty. Punkers were good at tweaking cultural noses and freaking many people out with an embrace of nihilism. Despair oozed from their lyrics and anger from their sound. Their fashion was hard-edged, lots of piercings, safety pins, spiked hair, Doc Martens, and plaid flannel shirts. One important component of punk music was its revolution against the music industry, that Goliath that decides who will and what will succeed. Punk was a do-it-yourself movement, garage bands and such, self-publishing and promoting to escape the big brother of commercial music. Independence is highly valued in the world of punk. The goth culture, with its dark fashion, revels in the extreme darkness, as if they are humanity's yes to Carl Jung's advice to know and embrace our shadow side. Goth music and art is dark and beautiful to its appreciators. And then rap came out of the Black youth culture and chronicled Black reality, anger, pride, creativity, and a rhythm to which most of white America could not and did not want to dance. All of these youth-driven movements, with their particular music and art, are in response to an overpowering American culture that made no room for them. They knew it, and so they made their own worlds. It wasn't just rebellion against their parents. It was always bigger than that. Did the larger American culture ever consider that these movements were something to be respected and embraced? Not in your life. And the truth is that the beatniks, hippies, punks, goths, and rappers would probably have been unhappy if they had been embraced. Where would the fun have been in that? But I bring all of this to us today as a part of our Lenten theme of unity, because there is always value to be found in revolution. These movements invite us to look at ourselves and ask, is this how we want to be? Are we living surface-driven, shallow lives? Do we want to be cookie-cutter suburbanites, seen as mere fodder for marketing campaigns? Are we attracted to authoritarian rhetoric? How deep is our consumerism? While the idea of punk and goth music gives me a headache, they hold a mirror up and invite me into self-examination. What are the limits of my cultural attitudes? Am I what they rebel against? The church is certainly a part of that. So how can our message of belovedness make it to them? The reason I bring up these rebellious groups is that we have been benefiting from one of them. Burning Man is a community, kind of a brigadoon, that springs up each year in the desert of Nevada. It has many of the same motivations as all of the other movements: a desire to make the world a world in which people feel seen, accepted, and valued. Burning Man began as a festival and has become a worldwide cultural phenomenon, which is art and wild self-expression at its heart. There is a small group of Episcopalians who have attended the events at Black Rock, Nevada, and decided that their contribution, everyone who goes, is to give something. Their contribution would be to offer blessings, liturgy, and even Bible study to any who wish to enter their camp, and that has been surprisingly successful. The offering and receiving of a blessing by someone who wanders in and says yes often results in weeping, some deep heart connection made, an unacknowledged void that has been suddenly filled. To facilitate the worship of this group, the Black Rock Prayer Book emerged. We have been using the blessing from it these past few months. The world now is too dangerous and too beautiful for anything but love. I wonder if since the Beat generation of the 50s, if we as Greater America have missed other gems of wisdom and understanding from all of these rebels. Perhaps if we had looked at them from the perspective of unity rather than being threatened by them, if we had considered the sincerity and integrity of their rebellion, we might have learned something and made some different choices in the last 60 years. Those who disturb us can be our greatest teachers. Just look at Jesus.